Good evening to one and all present here. And we welcome you to the IPA e-conference on Investigation Reviewer Qualification in association with SSA Business Solutions. I'd like to thank Mr. Vijay Donde and Sarfaraz from SSA for their support in putting together this e-conference. And as I can see, there's tremendous interest from the industry to learn more about this topic. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Shirish Belapure, the Senior Technical Advisor at IPA, to set the context for the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Devang. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the, I think this year's second session in web series, which we did last year, almost 12 sessions we did. And this year, this is the second session in the year. On the knowledge sharing session, this is again happening. Last month, we had a session on the supply chain. I think many of you might have attended those sessions. This time, the topic is very interesting. Particularly on anything on investigation, you get a good response. And I can see here, we have got so far 91 people on the present, but expected to be much higher now. 450 people are registered for this session. So interest looks to be very high in this particular topic. It is not only our interest, but regulatory interest too. I think a lot of FD 483 still come on the investigation, not proper investigation. And many warning letters have also come because of that. So naturally, the interest has to be high. And this is essential that investigation has to be complete and we need to go to the root cause in every situation. At least probable root cause is essential. And that's why it is necessary that the reviewer has to be very proper so that regulators don't find the holes into the whatever investigation have been done. And that's why the qualification of the investigator who is doing the investigation or reviewer is very important. And probably that's what we'll be learning today. And we have got two very important persons here. One is Nilanjana Basu. She is the Senior Technical Manager with the Lupin. And Dr. Vijay Donde from the CEO of SSA. So I think let us have the interesting session from them. I would like to hand over to Vijay Donde to take it forward. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Risa. Thank you so much for setting the context very brilliantly and for welcoming the participants. Before we get into the webinar, I'd just like to set some ground rules for everyone present. All the participants here have been kept on mute so that this would minimize the background noise and the white noise during the webinar. But please rest assured that the mute is only for the audio. The chat box is open. So whenever you have any queries or questions that you would like to raise to the panelists, please feel free to drop it in the chat box itself. And towards the end of the session, we'll make sure to address all the queries possible. If there are still some queries that are not addressed, we will be addressing them after the webinar and we'll be sending it out through email to all the participants. We will also be sharing a shareable version of the presentation after the webinar and the recording of the webinar on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn. And we will be providing the links to you. So if you wish to refer to this in the future at any point, or if you want to share it with other participants who weren't able to join, please feel free to do so. Okay, with that out of the way, I'd now like to formally introduce the panelists for today's session. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Vijay Donde, who is the CEO at SSA Business Solutions. He has over 24 years of experience, with 15 years of experience in global management consulting in the area of operational excellence. Since 2006, Mr. Vijay has been leading SSA's Asia Pacific unit. He has led several transformation programs for hundreds of clients across diverse sectors. And since the last 12 years, he's been actively working with the pharma and biotech industry, leading projects such as implementing OPEX, effective CAPA investigation, Lean Lab, and QBD, to name a few. By qualification, Mr. Vijay is a mechanical engineer from Mumbai University with an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. We welcome you, sir. I'd also like to welcome Ms. Nilanjana Basu, who is the Senior General Manager, Technical Training at Lupin. She has more than 24 years of experience with Dabur, Alembic, Piramal Healthcare, and now for the last 12 years with Lupin Limited. Corporate quality assurance is her core area, and she has authored multiple guidelines and policies on quality management systems. She has worked as a lead CQA auditor, and during that stint, audited multiple sites in India and abroad. She has institutionalized the learning management system in her current organization that is currently being used by 12,000 plus employees across. Nilanjana has done her master's in pharmaceutical technology from Jadavpur University and MBA from Calcutta University. We welcome you, Nilanjana ma'am. Nice to have you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'd now like to hand it over to you for your presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Devang. I'll just give me a moment. I'll share my screen. My screen is visible, right, Devang?
Yes, yes, it's visible.
Yes, yes. So thank you very much once again for the nice introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I hear that there are a lot of participants today to this interesting area which we have decided, and I'm sure that you will not get disappointed. So in today's session, we are looking at this investigation process with a different lens. Investigation, as Belapure sir had said, that once we talk about it, there is so much of interest in the industry for valid reason. Today, what we are trying to do is we are digging investigation that what if we do what, so that investigation we won't have to do, that might sound something. Let's go forward and see what is the agenda. So we will refresh our knowledge on the importance of a robust investigation process, the key challenges which we all know that in the organization, what we face during investigation, and then what if our review process was so sound that we hadn't made the failure, so investigation wouldn't have taken place at all. So that way, today's presentation is what can we do in the industry so that we don't make errors. Investigation doesn't happen. So that way, let us all get tuned and look at it. I'll go forward. So we all know what is the overview of an investigation process. So there is one person, one fine morning, doing some task. And then while doing the task, there is a particular error that happens. The person follows procedure, records the incident on an appropriate document. Then the initiator immediately escalates that, notifies, and then investigation starts. And then the root cause is found out and the kappa is. And we all know this process, just to refresh if we start our discussion. Now, in the entire chain of activities, if you look at it, there is one person who is checking and checking and checking, who is the reviewer. So if the reviewer is very alert, then we are catching this at this point itself. So the error doesn't take place at all. Now, once the reviewer misses to see that and it progresses, then the snowball effect starts taking place. So one thing takes the another one, and then we move forward. And then finally, there are, we cannot just make it zero. We can reduce our errors. In case it reaches to the investigation report, there also reviewer has an immense role to play. The reviewer is not someone who is just checking what is presented to them. One has to have that understanding of digging deep into the cause, leading to the discrepancy, and identify the exact reason for occurrence of a failure. Because if you don't stop it there, then what happens? So investigation, you have not done it well. So you haven't found out the root cause. Now that error is going to come back again. That is number one. The second thing is your investigation report becomes so inadequate. You face an inspection, that investigation report you take out. There is inadequacy, agency doesn't like it. They give you citation, there is 483. You respond. I should say we all respond. And then it gets escalated further. There is warning letter. If there is a product performance issue, and if we have not identified that, that causes product failure. And then in the meantime, while doing all such things, there is a batch delay and productivity loss. These are all, we all know, these are the direct impact of not doing it right. Not only investigation, right from the beginning in the entire chain, as I mentioned. There is the impact on company culture, brand image, share price, and our moral. So if we can stop it there, and we can do that, and that's where we are discussing today, then all these snowballing will not, we can stop them young. Now, what is the agency? I mean, we are knowing this just to refresh our knowledge on that, and so that our conversation can move forward more effectively. In 211192, which is like production report, what agency is talking about, it is said that all drug product production and control records shall be reviewed and approved by the quality control unit. This is the step 1. Step 2, if there is any unexplained discrepancy, that shall be thoroughly investigated. Step number 2. A written record of the investigation shall be made. Step number 3. This is all about 211192. Similarly, for laboratory records, which is 211194, there is another indication that review. Sometimes it so happens that, you read or we read what we want to read. So if you look at it, they are talking more. Investigation is just an offshoot. The first and foremost requirement is that you do this work and do it correctly, and it gets reviewed. And gets reviewed means what? It gets reviewed and caught for if there is any mistake. So similar thing has been written for laboratory records, the initials of signature.
Excuse me, Niranjana.
Yes.
The slides are not very visible. I guess probably what you can do, you can just stop your video sharing. Possibly you may get a better bandwidth because slides are not very legible.
Okay. Thank you for, probably there is a network. Is that better, or should I share it once again?
I think you can share it once again. Yeah.
Still it is the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try and reshare it.
Vijay, everybody has this problem because I am able to see these slides.
Many of them have this.
Okay.
Yeah. Getting messages.
Is that better?
Yeah. I think there is some problem.
Not very clear, Niranjana.
I think, Nilanjana, we can try this. Maybe if you can turn off the video from your camera, that will, I think, increase the bandwidth a little bit.
She's done that.
Which I have already done.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's done.
Devang, do you have the presentation from her? Then you can present it directly.
No, I don't have.
Not this. Yeah, not this one.
Yeah.
Save the time and this. Can you send this to Devang? Then he can start presenting.
Yeah.
On the mail. That will be easier.
Yes, sorry for that glitch. So coming back, in laboratory record also the similar thing is said, like the initials or signature of a second person showing the original records have been reviewed for accuracy, completeness, and compliance with standards. Similarly, when we look at EU, there also similar thing, that documents to be designed, prepared, reviewed with care. And same thing for ICHQ7 also. So overall, right from the US FDA guidelines to EU, ICH, everyone is talking in the same language where they are saying that whatever you are doing, that needs to be reviewed by someone, and it has to be in compliance, compliance with the standards, accuracy, and there it has to be accurate, and it has to be complete. Now, as Belapure sir also in the initial talk he had mentioned, look at the top 10 observations, the citations, 2016 to 20, the investigation is number 1. If we go to the other observations, we see that 192 and 188, they are the top citations. Now, if we look at 2020 to 2022, we know because of pandemic, the number of inspections was less, but there also this records and report of 211, 192 is again coming on the top. So overall, looking at that investigation process, our review requirement, this is one area, if we can do something about it, if we improve that, then many of our problems get sorted. Now, when we start doing the investigation, what are the key challenges that are faced by the organization? This is something that in the industry, I mean, there is no particular organization here. This is common for all of us, that the person is engaged in multiple activities. We cannot investigate it thoroughly because there is a resource constraint. That thing happened then. I do not know what exactly happened. So the traceability of the chain of events, the right evidence, of course, I mean, we cannot take it out because it has happened in the past, and unable to, as a result, unable to find the correct root cause. There is another thing, that limitation or legacy within the software system. So we are not getting the footprints properly to investigate. And the most important thing, which we are aware, but probably we haven't put so much of focus as yet, is the skill level of reviewer and their availability. Many of the times when we investigate, we hear that this happened in night shift, reviewer was not available. Okay, why reviewers are not available in all the shifts? This is something common thing that happens. So it is high time that we focus on the reviewer, their qualification and their I am just taking a pause. I will check with Devang. Is it better now?
Yeah, it is better, Nilanjana.
Much better.
Go ahead.
Okay. So when we look at the reviewer in our lab, in our shop floor, there are reviewers. What are the soft skills that are required for the reviewers? They should be, as a person, they should be alert people. We know, I mean, the different attributes of people. They should be alert. They should be meticulous. The focus and concentration should be good. This is something like you can identify one person from the other, who has it, who doesn't have it. So accountability of reviewers is another thing. We know in many of the investigation report, we say that reviewer missed to see this. After that, what? We move on, we try to correct that. But the reviewers have to own that review of the documents, and they should be made accountable for not catching something. That is very, very important in the entire process. Process knowledge. So in the past, in one of our projects, we were debating that the person, and in the industry, we always can check this, that if the person is reviewing chromatogram, should he or she be qualified, HPLC qualified analyst? So that was the time when we had debated, and we said that that's very difficult to do because you need so many reviewers and they are not analysts. So they are reviewers. But the point that came out of that discussion with our consultant and all the subject matter experts, that until and unless you have operated the instrument, you know how to read the chromatogram, you cannot be a reviewer. So you have to have that check that whether or not this person has been an analyst for QC to do certain work as a reviewer. And when you see that there is a discrepancy in the document, the person, the reviewer has to bold enough to take certain critical decisions that go or no go. So this is like the soft skill of a reviewer. Now, Now going forward, what is the need for qualified reviewer? Reviewer, sometimes as a few years back also, it has been like this, that if an analyst becomes experienced, then that person automatically by default becomes a reviewer. So, and if you have looked at the previous slides where we have spoken about the mistakes and investigation inadequacy. So what are we doing currently? We are making errors, we are making investigation is inadequate, and then we are making a kappa and we are chasing the kappa, and then that the cycle continues. In reviewing, if the reviewer gets qualified, then that reviewer is expected to catch the mistake at the point of happening. So the rest of the things will not happen. So how is that? That's not magic? How we can achieve that? There has to be some system support where there will have to be a structured approach for review. And many of the companies, I think most of the companies are having that, what is to be checked. And there has to be a consistency in review activity. I remember that in our school and college days, we always used to think that when the paper goes to the examiner, how one examiner checks the paper, other examiner checks the paper, there will always be a variation. So not all will be good or not all will be bad, something like that. So review activity, if there are 10 reviewers, are they equally good? Do we have that assessment in our system? So, and then do they have the adequate knowledge and experience for doing that job? Are they really trained for this specific task? This is something, I think this is the most important point, that these people, these 10 people are trained and qualified to become a reviewer, and how they are getting assessed, how many mistakes they are catching. We need to monitor that. And once reviewer gets qualified, they do not remain qualified forever. So there has to be a periodicity to assess their competency and remain them in the qualified state. We have in Lupin, we have created module where we have simulated the errors. So through that, we qualify our reviewers. So whether or not they can catch, which is put inside the documents, and then we tell them to go through, this is a gamified module, and whether they can catch, if they can catch, they will become the reviewer, otherwise they may not. I spoke about the structured approach. So the checklist. So whether there is the completion of all steps or not, whether the signature with dates and the corrections. So there is a list. I know this document will get shared, so I'll not get into all the steps, but what I'm trying to say is there has to be a structure, and the reviewer, the subjectivity of one reviewer to the another. So what I had mentioned about the variation, we can stop the variation if we have a checklist which everyone has to be filling. And if we focus on that human variability factor, if we make a very good checklist, then that can be stopped. This is something that we have tried and we have seen this. Now, in the checklist, if you today after the session go back and see your checklist, in many of our checklists are yes, no, not applicable. So when we are saying that reviewer has to be good, reviewer also has to get a system support. Our checklist also has to be such that it makes the reviewing work easier. Like if you look at the left one, there are multiple points, and there we are expecting to write yes, no, not applicable, which is something that it is a very vague thing to write. Instead, if we say that what we want to have, flushing done using warm water or solvent, what have we done, and the analyst very consciously writes down what he has done, then for the reviewer also it becomes very useful. In our case, when we do the review activity, we all will agree that it is kind of in silos, happens in silos. So analyst has done it, he's prepared the sequence, and then the printout is taken. An analyst has moved on to something else, and then the reviewer is checking the files, taking the printouts. It's done one after the other. Instead, if we do it together, and I will share one example from outside industry, and I will talk about it once you watch this.
So it's time to start doing the checklist.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll take the safety inspection check and before start checklist down to the FMCTU because we're still waiting for the performance.
Okie dokie. So safety inspection checklist, services and chocks.
Well, checked.
Checked. Maintenance status.
Checked. There's nothing wrong with the aircraft.
Battery.
On.
Electronic hydraulic pumps.
Are on.
Landing gear lever.
Is down.
And ship's library.
It's checked.
Okay.
So as you can see here now, what you do when you read checklists is a read, look, listen kind of system. So Holly is reading the checklist item. I'm responding to it. She needs to listen to what I'm saying, and she needs to verify that what I'm saying is actually correct. So I'm not rhyming the checklist. So this is very important when you read checklists.
In reviewing, we have tried this in our lab that the analyst and the reviewer do it together and not one after the other. And that becomes, they can catch more errors like that. As I mentioned about the simulation, so what we do is we give a real life thing, a checklist or some filled up document, and we run it through. There are 20 cases like that inside one reviewer's qualification. And we try to see that whether or not they could catch all of them. And here it is not like 80% or 75%, not that. It has to be 100%. Not a single mistake should be left. So that is another way of reviewer's qualification. Now, when we come to the technical skill set, the reviewer has to be investigative, analytical, and problem solver. Now, investigating means what? The process understanding has to be there. So they have to have that subject matter expertise. So as I mentioned that if I'm doing on a particular technique, I am supposed to be qualified in that technique. And of course, the investigation tools one should be aware of. And then there will be 10 items. So when we did a lot of activities around human error investigation, we saw there are 10 areas that we are finding out. And then where do we work? So prioritize the 5 top ones and go deep into it. The error is not going to come back. And also, while we say that there has to be a subject matter expertise, the other departments, the system requirements also to be understood properly. Analytical is also something I think we are born with. Of course, training can improve that, but there is there are some people who are born with that sense of a stronger logical reasoning and the analytical mind. So that person should be having the data analysis, its meaningful representation. It is not about a statistical graph or something, what it means and what it is indicating. That has to be understood. And finally, the problem solving. Sometimes we say, okay, this is manual, this has to be made automated, and that is going to take care of the problem. But the technical feasibility, the weighing, that it is not that I have suggested something, people didn't take it. Why people are not taking it? Because it is not practical. So the reviewer has to be such person who kind of collaborates, tries to understand the point and then finds out the solution. So system understanding, the SOP, what if you are doing one particular change, how it is going to impact the existing system, that understanding also has to be there. Different investigations, when we review, it is not about a 50-page or 60-page investigation report, which I am just reading out and just looking for some signatures missing. Of course, they are also important, but how my mind should work. So one example, that investigation should have addressed the variability between batches. Focus should have been on processes that could explain such variability. So you can understand that there is a variation because of which there has been a failure. So information about the process parameter ranges and possible failure modes, which we get in developmental study, that should have been referred. So reviewers should be such that they are not reading that 60-page document. They are also taking it back to the development report and connecting whether whatever we had written there is the same thing we are getting on the shop floor. So that kind of, it is having everything. It has got the investigative mind, it has got the analytical mind, and it also solves problems. So it also tells that what is to be done. So the other examples are we looking at possible method accuracy, reproducibility issue? Have we? So it is not about that you saw something and you said, probably this is what has happened. You are getting into the depth of it and trying, and you are questioning your fundamentals. Now, still, I mean, we have that awareness and everything, but errors happen. This is something that what happened here. This is something, a very interesting thing where reviewer failed. So residual solvent was getting tested by GC, and then the analyst had made the sequence, put the vials, and then the reviewers came and they took the printout. He took the printout, and then he was to check vial after vial. What he did, he took out the vials and checked them, and while keeping them back, he made a mistake. So it is more than review, but this happens. It is more than review, that reviewer actually has introduced an error into the system, and that has actually led to OS. So this is something like very, very interesting, and you will not expect. And then it went on for some time. That analyst said, I have kept it right. Reviewer said, I didn't do anything. But the result was the peak was not coming and it was an OS. Similarly, this is something very simple. There were all 200 ml volumetric flask, and only one 250 ml flask was taken by mistake by the analyst, and the reviewer was to check that. And everywhere at each step, it was through. It was not found out. While it was quite visible, the 200 ml had a blue band, the 250 ml didn't have, still it was not. It just had gone, and then it led to error. So different errors, and if we focus on the reviewer's qualification very, very, it brings us into the focus of it, and we qualify them just like we qualified our analysts, periodically keep them reviewing and qualifying. And then we can see a very good improvement in our error reduction. Reviewers will have to remember that reviewers are integral part of our overall compliance system. Reviewers are to be made, and they should not be made by default. So we identify as the soft skill that we have seen, the technical skill that we have seen. Out of that, we should choose that these people have the potential for becoming a reviewer. And then we make them go through the reviewer's qualification, and then keep on qualifying them. And we also track the kind of errors that slips through these reviewers. And then likewise, we make it a review parameters by the senior management and all our review forums. As I mentioned, that it has to be of high accountability. And if we have a good review, so good review and investigation load are inversely proportional. And the quality of review actually can make or break our efforts. Just let us imagine one time when we are not all our errors, of course, errors are happening, but errors are all caught before it moves forward. So that will be a absolutely, sounds like utopia now, but it will save our so much of time which goes into investigation, which goes into the batch rejection and so much of things. So that's the overall thing of the investigation, the reviewers, and overall process, and the regulatory expectation and the citations. So thank you very much for this opportunity, IPA. And with this, I am handing it over to Vijay. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilanjana. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
First of all, thank you so much for bringing such a wonderful insights with the couple of cases and the example, because I think more and more example that gives a lot of clarity to the people and why this entire the efforts and why this entire objective. I think that is something which you have explained very nicely, Nilanjana. So what I'll do, I'll try my level best to just add on and supplement certain things based on what is needed. Let me just share my screen, and I want the team to confirm whether the screen is visible. Is my screen is visible?
Yeah, now it's visible. It's clear.
Okay. Okay, I hope it's fine now. It's in the full screen mode.
Yes.
It's in the presenter mode. You'll have to
just come now. Just
Reverse it.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine now.
Works. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for giving this opportunity. And of course, my humble submission, I'm non-pharma guy. So guys, you'll have to pardon my ignorance. Somewhere I might commit some mistakes, but I will try my level best to do justice to the topic what we have selected today. The first and the foremost, when we talk about the reviewer qualification as a program per se, okay, what are the essential factors for effective review process? And when I'm going to talk about this review process, this can be from the investigation review point of view, or it can be analytical review point of view as well. But before I really jump into this, what is important here, I think we must understand and appreciate. We must understand and appreciate this investigation and analytical review is not a policing act or policing exercise. Ideally, what is expected here that there is going to be a lot of value addition which is going to come out of this, the role what the reviewers are going to play in the organization. The most important part when I see the reviewer's role, because this is going to be a final leg into the business value chain before certain things goes to either to the customer or before it goes to the regulator. Hence, the role and the responsibilities what the reviewer has got, it is absolutely immense. And as Nilanjana has mentioned one particular point very, very precisely, it is important. A reviewer is not something that you are just trying to put the person because somebody has got a certain years of experience and we feel that he can be a part of the reviewer. No, there are certain prerequisites are very, very important. So which I'm going to supplement what Nilanjana has mentioned some time back. But before that, what I just want to probably reiterate now, why we are talking about this reviewer qualification and why industry is looking at that as important as your investigation or investigator qualification. Because the investigators, the way they are going to investigate any event in the organization, it is equally important when it comes from the review point of view. So some of the consequences which all of us are experiencing in some other form, but I'm just trying my level best to bring some few pointers to it. Now, what happens if the review mechanism, okay, is not up to the mark? If it is not really, to the extent what is needed, let me use some pointers. Now, what will happen if it is not very adequate? it is going to talk about the organizational inadequacy and inaccuracy in the review process. What does that mean? It will basically expose the improper flow of in the reporting mechanism, the improper references, what kind of the references we are using, okay, while providing some kind of the justification or some kind of the documentation part. The lack of evidences, even it happens during the investigation also. The deviation from the GDPs, the grammatical errors. So many things might go wrong. Sometimes what happens, we take certain things for granted and we feel these are certain things which are very, very common. But no, it's not, because as I said, the reviewer is the guy who is going to be into the final leg of in the organization. So they have got a very huge role and the responsibility to play while working in the review mechanism. If I had to say another part, if my mechanism is not again up to the mark, or if it is missing certain things, there is a good possibility that we might miss certain non-compliances, although it is within the limits, which might becomes like an observation during the system audit. So just few example, like your system suitability failure or incorrect calculations. To add few more, if you really look at again the desired level of accuracy and consistency, that is what as an organization we are looking at it. Now this cannot be achieved, okay, if the review mechanism is not the foolproof, if it is not a sound, or it is not like the systematic in nature. So this is another consequences, as an organization which we might face. Typically, we have been experiencing this the data integrity issues. Yeah, even if my mechanism of the review has got some kind of the loopholes, or if it is not very effective, the possibility of this data integrity might become very, very severe. And it may happen, in just to cite a few examples. Of course, there are many. It can be in terms of the adjustment of the raw data. And if the reviewer is not going to review those things, there is a possibility the people who are going to perform, they might make some kind of the mistake. It is expected. And that is the reason why the reviewer's role is becoming very, very important. At the same time, whatever the data which we are taking out of our instruments, if those are not being properly captured, again, this might become a kind of the data integrity issue. And that's where the reviewer's role becomes very, very crucial and very important. To add a few, now it's not only that, but what is happening now, that is how it is going to create the organizational image, okay, towards the GMP as well as the regulatory perspective. Now, how good we are in terms of following the GMP practices, how good we are in the eye of the regulators, not only regulators, but in terms of the customers as well. So this is something which is very, very important, because how the customer is going to judge us, whether our review mechanism is good or whether it is a sound. It is, of course, it will be depending on the number of customer complaints or the product complaints which are coming from, the number of deviations and the number of incidents which are happening because of the ineffective review mechanism. Although I'm using a word poor, which is a bit harsh. Yeah, but I just want to bring the reality. So if it is not very effective, this is where certain things which we are going to land up and which we are going to experience as we are going to go ahead. And the last but not least, the consequences in terms of the patient safety. Because what happens if I really don't do the proper review, okay, it might impact on the product quality, okay. The bad quality of the product might go to the market, and in turn it will have an impact and implications on the patient safety. So this is sitting at the top of everyone, as we are here to serve the mankind. And that's the reason why the review mechanism, and why I'm just bringing this dimensions to it, because when I have been visiting to the couple of the pharma companies and industries, many times the reviewers' roles, I'm not saying everywhere, but I have been seeing this, reviewers' roles are not being taken so seriously. Sometimes what happens is somebody is there in the system for maybe 15 years or 20 years, and then probably he is keen to get into the reviewer as a role. But it is not merely the interest of any individual. It is important because he is going to carry the most important responsibility for the organization. So there are certain things which, as Nilanjana has precisely mentioned about what kind of the the subset, what kind of the qualities, the attributes, the reviewer must have. So that becomes very, very crucial. And that's how, when I'm saying the ineffective review mechanism, we are going to face this kind of the consequences. Having said this, what is important here? The responsibility. Now, if these are the consequences, then what are the responsibilities as a reviewer we have? And when I'm talking of this reviewers, it is not merely from the investigation point of view, but it is from the analytical point of view, from the QC laboratory point of view as well. So if you see that the few, of course, there are many, but some of the important, probably I thought I'll just mention over here. The documents that need a thorough review, there should not be any compromise at any cost. Now, as Nilanjana has shown, the kind of the checklist, and in fact, there is a time for even for us to go back and revisit the checklist as well. The checklist should not become a tick list. It should become a more and more effective. So that what happens when we are going to create those checklists, it is important that the reviewer should never ever miss the records. When I'm talking the records, it's the batch manufacturing record or maybe the packaging records. Maybe any other records which is in terms of the logbook, in terms of the training records, in terms of the validation, the line clearance, and so many. When it comes to the review part, in terms of the laboratories, it is very, very important to have in terms of the analytical records, in terms of the working standards, in terms of the calibration, the daily activities, the reagents, and the solution. Now, all of you must be thinking that what is that I'm talking different today. Now, the problem here is that since we are so much engrossed in our day-to-day activity, and sometimes it's not intentionally, but sometimes we take certain things for granted. And the reason why, in fact, I really appreciate the video what Nilanjana was showing. Okay, it's like during the aircraft. Now, it's very important that anything and everything what we do it. In fact, these guys are flying this aircraft multiple times, but they never take it for the granted. Anything and everything, before every takeoff, everything will be done so religiously and meticulously. And that is what is needed even when we are going to do in case of the reviewer parts. Like your QMS elements, be it a microbiology related records, environmental, the water analysis, the testing records. Now, these are certain things what we are doing day in and out. Now, when somebody is going to come from outside, either from the customer or somebody from the regulatory, it is not that they are going to find out something different outside our four walls. Now, this is something what we are doing it. And that is where when we talk about what is that the role and what is that the responsibility as a reviewer we are calling. Many times what happens, our major focus in the organization is how can we improve the effective investigation? Yes, that's something which is important. Needless to say that. But having said that, that is not adequate when we talk about the organizational effectiveness systems. Then the second part, when it comes to what is that they are supposed to cover during this review mechanism, the procedural compliance, okay, with respect to whatever the pre-approved criteria are there. Then the documentation compliance practices is something which we need to think about it, which we need to do about it. We are following that. Sometimes what happens, even organization, we do rate certain reviewers. These are reviewers are good reviewers. These are the maybe the moderate or maybe average reviewers. So there is nothing called good or the average reviewers. The reason is being my process is not adequate enough, okay, to educate my people from bringing them from the average to maybe the good reviewer or an excellent reviewer. So this is where these are certain practices which we need to lay it down. And this has to be followed, be it the critical process parameters or critical quality attributes. We must keep at the back of our mind while reviewing this particular part, while reviewing this entire mechanism and the process what we are doing. The possibility of error in reporting of the non-conformity. Even this is something which we have to be very, very careful. Because sometimes what happens, whenever the event or error reporting happens, even the way this has been reported, it is expected that in the reviewer, because this is something like you are talking about the investigators or the people who are performing the task at the graduation level, and the reviewer is going as a kind of the post-graduation level, because they have to have the next level of skill set, so that they need to understand and even guide the people on the ground. So that is something which is important. So they should definitely cover this part. and the reviewing the associated records and the data. This is absolutely no compromise on this, because this is something which is going to help us in making more and more, bring more and more authenticity. And of course, the completion of associated steps while working on the non-conformity when it is reported. This is as a part of what we should cover. So in other words, if I have to summarize, when I say the good reviewers, what are the benefits? What are the advantage? One, it will bring a control over good documentation practices for sure. It will help to create the prompt actions in case of any error. And when I'm saying the prompt actions, even it might help in terms of creating a real-time actions rather than getting into the postmortem. When I say the postmortem, what does that mean? That means something has been reviewed, document has been passed on, it has gone to the customers, or it has gone to the regulatory, or it has been seen by the auditor, and then some kind of the observations are coming, and then we are getting into again why things has gone wrong here and there. So what happens? The good reviewers is going to basically help to minimize. I'm not going to say it is going to be absolutely zero, but for sure, this will help to create the prompt actions on the real-time basis. It will avoid the data integrity breach. And this is something which is sitting at the top, because this is where the organizational image and the brand which will be at the stake. And this is where it is going to help to basically come out of the surprises. Now, what the auditor is going to find is what my reviewer is supposed to find. Now, my auditor is a kind of my reviewer is a kind of my internal auditors for me. Now, I see that it's an extension of my customer, which is sitting within my premises. It's an extension of the FD auditor, which is sitting in my premises. Hence, this is the advantage of having the good reviewers, which is very, very important. Another thing, as I mentioned, it is going to help to create the good reputation as far as the organization is concerned. Needless to say, when we talk about the warning letters, when we talk about the 483s, now the moment this comes, definitely that is where the image of the organization is getting eroded. For timely investigation, again, this is where the reviewer is going to help in terms of the timely investigation. I'm going to basically walk you with what the reviewer's role is going to be crucial when it comes to investigation part as a case, as an example. What will happen? This will improve higher level of accuracy in terms of the documents, records, and of course, all our pharmaceutical GMP. Now, sometimes what happens? Now, these are certain things which all of you must be thinking, does that mean you guys are not aware? Yes, we are aware. But what is important here? It is we have to go beyond what is awareness. We have to go beyond awareness. We have to go more into the compliance mode. We have to go more into educating the people, as a proactive measures. So if this is what is expected, this is what we are looking at it from the reviewer's point of view, then what are the qualities? I'm just extending the thought process what Nilanjana has explained in terms of what are the qualities of a good reviewers. I would put into the three components. One component I will put into the behavioral aspect. Other components I would like to put into the technical know-how. And the third component I would like to put into in terms of the leadership. So let me put when it comes to the behavioral aspect. One is that the reviewer has to be confident enough. Now, why it is a confident? Because as I said, he is an extended arm of your external agencies. Second, he should be authentic enough while convincing not only the external, but including the internal people. And as I said, I made a first statement in the beginning, the reviewer is not here to do the policing act. The reviewer, he is here to add a value to the organization. So he should be in position to really convince if something is not right, even to the internal people. If he is able to convince the internal people, obviously he will be good enough to convince even the external agencies or external the customers or the auditors as well. Second, he should be calm enough. Now, this is something which is very, very important. Sometimes what happens? Now, as a reviewer, now if I have a certain checklist and I start talking about, okay, now these are certain 4 or 5 elements that should be there as a part of my the review mechanisms. And there are certain points are not being complied by the team. It is not that somebody is not complying intentionally, point number one. And that is something which we need to really understand. So this is where he has to be absolutely the calm and composed. He should be able to communicate with the right frame, with the right wordings, with the right sentence to the internal people, so that they will get a confidence. They should not feel that a reviewer is coming and he's just doing the fault finding exercise. It is not fault finding exercise. That's the reason why he has to be calm. He should be sincere enough, and he should be disciplined. Now, when I'm saying the sincere and disciplined and unbiased, now he should not get biased, or he should not get bogged down by. There is a possibility the senior member in the organization, they might come and probably they will start putting their thought process. Now, they may be right, they may not be right on certain occasions. So as a reviewer, you should not get biased there. You should basically talk based on the data and not based on the seniority, not based out of the emotions as well. So this is something which is very, very important. And that's the reason why when I said, when you are going to assign this responsibility to the reviewers, don't try to go only by the people's experience alone. Experience is important. I'm going to talk about that in the subsequent slide when it comes to the technical part. But whether these are the certain parts, and this is where, as a part of even our HR process, when we are going to screen the people, when we are going to assess the people, when we are going to evaluate the people for this particular role, they have major role to play in seeing and enhancing this behavioral skill. Second, there is no negotiation of this. He has to be passionate, because now when you are going to play the role of the reviewer, this is kind of you are playing a devil's role. Because always the people are going to criticize you that you are there to find the fault. No, you're not there to find the fault. But what is important here, you are trying to basically communicate with the right language, with the right evidences, with the right justification, and for which you have to have a passion. You cannot get demotivated by the comments coming from either internal or coming from the external. Second, and the last, one of the important, of course, there are many, he should have a know-how about the specific tools and techniques, so that when he is going to talk, he is going to talk more based on the evidence, more based on the tools and technique. So that what happens, his experience is getting supplemented with these tools and technique, which will become more and more authentic when it comes to the behavioral aspect of any kind of the reviewer. Then comes to the technical know-how. Needless to say, technical expertise, system knowledge, his performance, the evaluation monitoring, very, very essential. It is needed. Enough working experience and knowledge in the specific areas is warranted. Appropriate training. And when we talk of the appropriate training, now there is a possibility. It is not that probably one time of the training is going to be good enough for someone to become a good reviewer. There has to be retraining. There has to be some gap assessment has to be done from the either behavioral or technical or the leadership perspectives. And then accordingly, the training skill needs to be customized. Let's not dump the training for the sake of dumping the training. So when we are sharpening the skill, sharpening which is like because that's a bread and butter for the pharma domain, and although more, he is playing very, very important role. So he should be aware about those things. What kind of the important SOPs? Of course, when we are going to talk about the SOPs, not necessarily he has to mug up those SOPs. He should know the relevant references, where it is, how it is, which clause it is, which ICH guidelines we are talking about, which SOP we are talking about, which, if it is a event related, if it is customer complaint related, if it is a OS related, if it is an analytical part, they should know which SOP to be referred at the certain point of time. Then coming to the next, the training on the relevant areas, which is, as I mentioned, the GDP, departmental SOPs, the calibration, and the operational SOPs. Specific training and grooming on the good reviews, which I have been talking about. Specialized training on the validation reports. Yeah, when it comes to the people from the analytical as well. how to review the qualification reports. Yeah. And at the same time, now since this role has got a huge responsibility, it is important for the reviewer to appraise himself and update himself with the ongoing changes, ongoing things which are happening in the pharma domain and the pharma industries. So he has to update himself with the current affairs. So that is something which is the underlying principle. And as we know that if the situations are so dynamic, every now and then things are changing. So he has to get aligned with those things. That's where when I talk about the technical know-how. Now, when I come to the next part, which is the leadership, very, very important, should keep a proper follow on the compliance. This is again a crucial part. And when I'm saying the leadership, now he is the leader for the given domain. It is irrespective of his designation. That is where when I say the leadership, because the buck stops with him before it goes outside. Hence that leadership role becomes important. Second, he should not be adamant. This is where again the behavioral and the leadership role will come. Because sometimes what happens when you are in the role of reviewer doesn't mean that, as I said, you are putting a gun on somebody's head. No, you need to understand, because even the investigator or the people who are into the laboratories, even they are into the learning phase, try and understand why things has gone wrong. What could have helped them to becoming something better? So instead of just sticking to the checklist and becoming a checklist and then not allowing people to move ahead, no, that's not something which is going to help. So this is where when I made the initial statement, he is going to bring a lot of value addition to the business and the organization. Should take ownership. It's very, very important. Now, when I'm talking about this ownership in terms of establishing the entire robust mechanism, okay, across the department. Now, in fact, he is going to be kind of an internal trainer, okay, or internal facilitator to the people or to the function or to the process where he is going to do the review mechanisms. So each domain guy, each reviewer, he should become like a facilitator to their internal team. So that's the reason why I want all of us to really come out of that mindset of I have only this job and working into the silo mentality. No, we have to see from the big picture. We have to see from the broader perspectives. Again, should be straightforward. You just can't mince the word. Okay, if it is a black, is a black. You can't say it is a brown, it is a gray and all. No, you have to be absolutely straightforward. And your confidence is going to give a confidence to the external agency as well. So how authentic you are is something which is important. When you are going to, in fact, interact this with the high management as well, you should be straightforward, and that is where your ability to understand from the compliance perspective, from the analytical perspective, from the evidence perspective, from the maturity perspective, it is going to help you. Should conduct more and more training to his team and even the people who are down the line. Now, again, these are the training should not be like a need based. There has to be periodic frequency. So what happens? This periodic frequency, when you are going to do it, every time you are going to get a different learning altogether while doing this. So that's where it comes to the leadership. Now, just to cite, for example, if there is a reviewer who is going to do the investigation review part, I'm just taking one case, of course, a reviewer can be for the analytical as well, but just citing an example. What is that one must know, and what is the reviewer's role is there while working on this investigation review? And this investigation can be from your customer complaints, any event which is arising out of your customer complaint, or your maybe the deviation, or maybe the customer returns, maybe coming from your OT, or maybe for OS, something coming out of your trend analysis, and so on and so forth. The first and the foremost, the people who are going to review this investigation, it is important that they should know what are the different steps as per the ICH guidelines, okay, when they are going to review any kind of the investigation or any kind of the event which has been investigated by the team, either cross-functional. So first of all, they should know what are all those 7 steps in terms of the identification to evaluation to investigation analysis they'll follow. Now, what happened? Many times, the people who are going to review the investigation report, before it goes to the outside. Their own understanding about the 7th step or the intricacity which is needed, if that is not very clear, then there is a possibility people who are actually doing a right investigation, there can be a conflict because the reviewer is not maybe fully aware about this entire step. So it is important for the reviewer to first undergo this investigation mechanism and understanding how this investigation to be done with the 7 steps. Now, if I have to say, if one reviewer is there, what a reviewer needs to review while reviewing the documents or investigation report. As a part of the event identification, which I'm sure all of you are aware, I'm not talking something new, but this is something which we are missing at most of the time. One, how the event has been reported, how the event has been identified, what are the different sources of the event identification? Are we having a clarity from where this event has been emerged? Is it an external source? Is it an internal source? So when I'm talking about the external source, it's like a customer complaint, or maybe the customer audit, or maybe the something which is coming out of even the supplier point of view also. So it is important for me to know from where the source is coming. Now, if it is internal, now then who are the internal guys who are actually creating this? Now, is it coming from the operators? Is it coming from the warehouse? Is it coming from the maintenance guy? Is it coming from the analyst? Is it coming from whom? The reason why, now as a reviewer, you need to see whether that source has been clearly defined and identified. The reason is very, very simple. If you don't know the source, the chances of reaching to the root cause, okay, are getting minimized. I'm not saying it is going to be zero, but it will get minimized. That is what is important. Within what timeline this event has been reported? Again, that is something which is very, very important. And what is the documented evidence is available, okay, when the investigator has completed that investigation, and how the registration mechanism is there. Now, all these things is coming out of the guidelines coming from the ICH. So, one, the reviewer, needless to say, must have a know-how about the ICH guidelines. Yeah. Now, somebody will say, even if I don't know ICH guidelines, still we are able to do a good review. You will be able to, but still there are good chances that you may miss something. And that is where we are just bringing this, one of the important dimension as a part of this. Now, once the event identification has been done, now every event not necessary is going to be a critical or a major event. Now, this is where the reviewer has got very lead role, okay, or is very primary role or important role in the organization to educate even the investigator. Sometimes what happens, the investigators, since they may not be aware, how do I really define this event, whether it is a critical, major or minor? And since they may not be aware, what kind of the mechanisms, sometimes we have a mechanism in the organization, but I see that many times people are trying to convert every event as a major and critical, since I may not have a right justification to saying it is a minor event whenever actually it is a minor. So what is important here? The reviewer has a very important role to play in this, in understanding how that event has been evaluated. So how the risk has been classified, okay, while putting this event at the back of their mind. So that the people are very, very clear. Every organization has got certain guidelines while defining whether it is a critical, a major or a minor. Now, whether the investigators are complying to those guidelines. If no, we have to bring that concurrences. We have to bring that awareness. And sometimes, this is where we have to play the fatherly figure role, because sometimes people may not be aware. So while doing that, you are finding the gaps. But while finding the gaps, you have to give a resolution to them. You have to give them some kind of the awareness. We have to basically educate them as well. Then you need to understand, while the evaluation has been done, whether the countermeasure has been identified, defined, and countermeasures has been executed or not. Yeah. And what kind of the communication which they are supposed to do as a part of the ICH guidelines when event is going to get investigated. Now, these are certain things as a reviewer at the 30,000 feet. Of course, when you are going to deep dive into the document, you will have many things to be seen in terms of the sequencing, which I'm going to talk about it after some time. So this is when it comes to as far as my event evaluation is concerned. And this is where, as I said, the event classification, every organization will have their own guidelines. Make use of those guidelines. Okay, but ensure that those guidelines are actually being implemented across with the common understanding. Because what happens when the outsiders, agencies or the customer, they are going to come and ask a question, and if they find some ambiguity, that person to person understanding is different. So this is where even a reviewer, as a reviewer, we have a role to play in terms of educating the people. That's what I just said, the training the people on this kind of the gaps when you are identifying those. When it comes to the preliminary investigation part, now this is something which is very, very crucial to ensure that, like, you know, in crime investigation, you create a FIR. Now that first investigation report, that is precisely the preliminary investigation is going to play the role of that. Now, many places, what happens, I'm not saying that every now organization has got matured, but I'm just trying to see that how we can actually bring this maturity to the next level so that the confidence with the regulatory and the confidence is going, extra notch, and they are going to start believing in our system itself. Now, how the cross-functional teams are being identified while doing the preliminary investigation. One must be very clear what is the objective of the preliminary investigation. Many times we are not very clear why and where we are doing the preliminary investigation, why that is needed. Okay, and within what time frame we are supposed to do the preliminary investigation. Ideally, this is to be done within 48 hours to 24 hours. Sooner the better. But these are the timelines so that you don't miss this, some of the important your events related the factors or the cause which will be available. More if you are going to basically spread the time, there is a good possibility that you might start missing those critical information, which will be input for you doing the subsequent root cause analysis. Then comes your root cause analysis. This is where, now this is another. Now, in spite of doing many things, in spite of a lot of education in the organization in terms of the root cause analysis, still we have a tendency to work on the symptoms. Unfortunately, this is something which is there. We have raised our bar. If I have to say on the scale of 1 to 10, sometime back, couple of years back, we were there on the scale of 3 to 4. We have reached to 6 to 7. Some organization has got to 8. We have to go beyond that now. I'm not saying we are not matured, but we have to still go beyond that. Because as we are saying, and as all of us are aware, now India is going to become like the global hub, okay, or manufacturing hub for the entire world. So obviously the expectations are going to go sky high from our customers, be it a European or be it the Japanese or be it into the American customers as well. Hence, our understanding and our approach towards that has to go sky high. Now, there is another thing. As a reviewer, what is that we are going to do in this? It is important for us to understand. We need to whether the team is identifying some kind of the potential root causes as well. Now, there are certain root causes which are evident, which you are able to see, which are prominent for the event which has happened today. But there could be a certain potential which has not experienced today, but there is a possibility it might come some point of time. Now, as a reviewer, you need to bring that kind of the dimension to the investigator team and check whether this angle also has been seen and whether that has been explored. What is important? And the most important part, how do we do the validation of the root causes? That is something which is important. Why analysis? This is something which we keep on chanting like a God's name. Yeah. But in spite of that, we still stuck up at the symptoms level. Try and get into this habit of getting into why analysis. This is something. It's like this has come right. As a part of as a human being, it is in our DNA. Like a kindergartens, like the kids, they start asking the question. We need to start asking the same question. Guys, I'm not telling something new, but still I'm saying this is a missing link in many organizations when they are going to talk about the investigation. And this is where a reviewer has got very, very critical and important role to play. Solution generation. Now, while you are coming with the recommendation, preferably try to come with the recommendation which will be like an irreversible solution. And when I'm saying the irreversible solution, primarily what will happen, these solutions will not be person specific. Okay, so even today, when you are going to execute these solutions, tomorrow, irrespective of the person, my system should take care. Otherwise, what happened till the time that person is there in the system, the solutions will become more effective. But if those are out of the system, then possibly we may go back to the, again, the same cause, same issues. So preferably try to get into the irreversible mode of the solutions. Second, what will happen? Now, this is where that will create a, the more kind of the true corrective actions. Now, when you are going to implement this across or do the replication, even the replication might help you to get into the preventive modes, because the same thing might have not been experienced by the other sites. But this is where this learning can be extrapolated or the learning can be replicated. So even that can become a kind of the preventive measures for the other sites. So now, what is the role of a reviewer? This is where a reviewer is going to come and ask these questions. Hey guys, have you done this? Have you explored this? If no, how that can be done? And hence I'm just saying, this is where the value additions are coming from the reviewer, and which is very, very crucial, needless to say. Another part, what a reviewer has to do during this investigation review part. Now, I might be coming with some kind of the solutions. Now, I need to understand whether the implication of those on the upstream and the downstream, how that has been taken care. Because as an investigator or as an investigating team, they have a pressure of closing that event or closing that kappa. Now, while closing that kappa, which is important within the time frame, at the same time, as a reviewer, you need to go back and check, hey guys, while I'm implementing these solutions, whether this solution is going to have an impact on my upstream or downstream. Otherwise, this might create, okay, some event somewhere else, some point of time. Now, this is where another way to prevent the occurrence of the event at some other sources or some other functions. Now, this is where even we can come up with the preventive measures. That is where I'm saying the PA is not only for the existing process. The PA is something which I can design even for the some process which might come because of what I'm going to implement here. And then comes to the next solution implementation. So what is reviewer's role here again? Now, whether the solution implementation plan has been created properly. Now, many times what happens? Now, solution implementation happens at the broad level. Now, I just cite one example. Now, one of the solutions is that procurement of certain equipments. And I might say that, these actions will be closed maybe after 3 months. Now, procurement of the certain equipments is one of the recommendation, but that solution will have multiple tasks to perform. And all those multiple tasks are interdependent. Generally, we do forget to create those interdependent tasks. We feel that, okay, once I put this, that is good enough. No, that's not possible. Because this interdependent task will be performed by the different agencies as well. Now, again, I'm bringing the reviewer role. He has to go and see that, hey guys, have you created that? Have you identified the different tasks? And whether an individual task has got the owner or not. Don't try to put function name. No, that's not going to happen at any point of time. I'm bringing that as a value addition from the reviewer's point of view. And the last but not least, when we talk about the closure of the investigation or the closure of the kappa, what is that I'm going to do? Are we really clear on that? Whether the necessary follow-up has been done, whether the verification and the validation of the result has been done. Now, here, I have seen when it comes to the effectiveness of the investigation. Now, when we talk about this validation of the result, what has been seen, even many times the people who are part of the investigation, even sometimes they are not very clear what should be the timeline for me to validate whether the given solution or the recommendation is working or not. Now, there will be certain guidelines as a part of the organizations. Now, if those guidelines are not there, probably as a reviewer, as a cross-functional team, you can sit together, you can create it. You can support them in terms of creating those guidelines. So what happens? It becomes easy even for the investigator to ensure that while closing this, now this necessary validation has been done. And then once the validation has been done, then post that, whether can I make this as a part of the ongoing process. And then whatever the documentation change note is needed, those be it BPR, be it BMR, and all those things, I may have to create certain protocols. And then I bring that as a part of the system. Now, again, I'm bringing the reverse role. Have you done this? Whether the people have done this, ask that questions. Because what we are discussing now these are the same questions which are being asked by the people outside. They are not going to ask some different questions outside this. And that's where, as I can say, a reviewer is absolutely the crucial from the organization point of view. Verification plan and all whatnot. You have to ask, you have to validate this. Now I will just pick a few things because we have been talking about we have to identify the gaps. Now there are many things when you are going to identify the gap, but there are few things I thought probably I'll just make a mention over here. When you are going to identify the gaps, how to report and how to escalate those. The first is in terms of the document completeness, the sequence of the documentation and the event, the way it has happened, and the correctness. As Nilanjana has very precisely, she has mentioned in her presentation. Now this 3 CSC becomes very critical: completeness, sequencing, and the correctness of the document. What is that we are going to do in that? Just to make a few mention. These are not the only, but there are many. Ensure availability of a review of a base document like SOP and your SAP and other reference material. Is it made available? Important. Understand the various steps and the test based the document. I need to understand. That is where the domain experience and the guys experience getting into that same function and the process is very crucial. Confirm the completeness of the document, whether all the steps and the tests are executed as per the prescribed method. Okay, and there is no shortcut taken in this. So this is how it will help us in identifying in the various gaps. Ensure the sequential orders of the documents. Now the way I'm performing the task, likewise the way my documentation is being done, whether that sequence is being maintained while documenting this entire reports or the relevant inputs and the information. Very important. Ensure that the date, time should be in the increasing order. Now, is it a rocket science? Answer is no. But many times we do forget of this. So we have to say that so that the entire trail can be tracked, the trail can be justified, the trail of event can be convinced and communicated to the internal as well as the external. And again, for the QC testings, what are the complementary reports and the tests are there, those data and information we must keep as a part of the completeness, sequence, and correctness. There are many more. But these are some of the few I thought I just bring it when it comes to the completeness. Second, stepwise gap identification. There has to be a structured approach. Again, I'm bringing back to the thought process what Nilanjan has mentioned. There has to be a structured approach that is to be followed. Yeah. Otherwise, what happened? We really want to come out of that the person based, we categorizing the good reviewer and the average reviewer. No, the reviewer is a reviewer, and there cannot be good and bad, or there cannot be good and average, provided my system is taking care. So this is where you have to get into the various sequence steps, the results and the data, interdependent, the tests are there, those are reviewed simultaneously as and when it is necessary. Each activity test has been performed exactly as per the procedure what I mentioned. What action required if it is not done so? Now, as I said, it is not the fault finding exercise. It is you are finding the gap, but at the same time, you are giving some kind of the recommendation, you are giving some kind of the solution to them. And that is the reason, that is where the investigator team or the process team, they should look at you, okay, as a part of the major support into the organization. Now, they should look at you as one of the important source, okay, without getting caught or without getting unnecessary coming under the pressure coming from the regulatory and all. So this is where, as I said, we have a fatherly figure role to play here, because it is not merely identifying this has not been done. If no, boss, what is to be done? I need to basically understand that. Check the supporting data as evidence, as we said, the QC data, reporting, BMR, BPR recording, and so on. Compliance of the certain pharmacopoeials test, which is important. See that. Create those checklists. And I'm happy the way Nilanjana has shown that one of the checklists which has been prepared. But ensure that the checklist, don't convert that into the tick list. The checklist has to be like a real-time checklist, what we are going to follow. That is where we are going to ensure that the certain things will not be missed. Check the usage of the appropriate procedures, the techniques, the methods which has been validated, and be aware what are the updated protocols, what are the updated methods, and so on and so forth. Ensure finally all the calculated results, the values are within this. Likewise, again, there are many more coming from the stepwise gap identification. Then coming the third component in terms of documentation and recording of the comments. Now, these comments, it can be both positive remarks as well as the gaps are being identified. First of all, we must have a good documentation practice. Now, it is not abruptly someone is putting the comment based on their understanding and their convenience. No, there has to be a mechanism to be defined. Then there to be, as I said, when you are going to document certain these comments, it is important that this is easy to understand for anyone and everyone who is going to refer. This is not something only for you as a reviewer. So this is where you are going to set the platform, you are going to set the right example. How do you document any report, any event, any records, which can be understood by everyone with the common understanding, not the different understanding for the same report or same event. The documentation is appropriate for his and own understanding. It starts with that. Then getting into your sequencing and all. I'm not going to read anything and everything, but still. Then reference of the QMS number, the other investigation report should be indicated, whether those things are taken care. Ensure that you have a proper list of annexures. Now, this is something which is again very, very important. Now, as a part of your investigation report, many a times we have a certain supplement or the annexures which are there, but we forget to attach those. And in the last minute, whenever there is an audit is coming either from the customer or maybe from the regulatory, we start searching here and there. Now, whether the annexure itself is covering everything, and as per the annexure, whether those things are in place, and those things are into the right sequence as we discussed, time and again. Sometimes you have some reference documents which are lengthy. Now, not necessary that you'll be able to, probably attach all the entire document, but probably you can take references, certain photocopies of those things, and which you can attach, and whether those things has been done. So likewise, there are many more things which we must do as a part of the good reviewer to become from the average reviewer to good and excellent reviewer in the organization. Last piece, when it comes to the analytical data review, okay. So again, very, very important, the calculation part, whether the proper formulas has been done, whatever the Excel you are using, whether those has been validated Excel sheets are being used or not, because this is where there will be some kind of the macros will be involved into this. So again, that validation part needs to be taken care. Then the proper transcription of the raw data into the calculation is important. Guys, you must be wondering, Vijay, what is that you are telling us differently? But this is something which time and again we have been failing to do, thinking that this everything is very simple and nothing, there is no rocket science. And unfortunately, this is not rocket science at all. But what is important here, we are talking about the system time and again. The good documentation practice as per SOP, as I mentioned to you. Okay, and the last part, what I would like to mention about it here is that how we are bringing the good practices into the processes. Analytical data review, again, a reference of instrument numbers, the balance numbers and calibration accuracy, very, very important. References of your OS, incident deviation report, and so and so. Verification and usage of the instrument and analytical data. The list goes on and on. But these are some of the key I thought I just mentioned over here. Then comes to the attachments to the report. There will be many, but there are certain crucial and critical attachment, whether those are there. One, whether as a part of the analytical, balance way prints, whether those are there. Yes, I need to see whether those attachment are there. Instrument printouts showing the data and the information. And those again, the legibility of that, whether it is legible as well. It is very important. You just cannot take the printouts and which is not visible. Then although that itself can become a issue of the data integrity sometime. So how do you really do that? Then other supporting prints such as your instrument parameter, processing parameters, system suitability, compliance, and blah, blah, blah. So whether those relevant attachment has been done or not, external test reports, including the external, the testing laboratory reports are there. Some USFDA approvals are there as a part of it, whether how I attach those things. If certain protocols has been prepared and those protocols has been regularized, whether those protocols has been attached, I need to basically put those protocols as a part of this system. And of course, in case of the repeat testing is performed, due to this, of course, OS incident and all, related to that, whether that information is present, is attached, and it is made available. So to summarize again, why I was discussing about this, because we are talking about what will be the consequences if the reviewer mechanism is not strong. We discuss about what are the responsibilities as a reviewer we have. We discuss about what are the qualities as a part of the good reviewer or as an excellent reviewer one must have with the technical behavioral the leadership. Then we took a case. If it is an investigation review, what is that as a reviewer we are supposed to do, including the 7 steps. And then we were talking about how to identify the gaps in terms of the documentations, yeah, in terms of the reporting, yeah, and in terms of the analytical part, we discuss about what kind of the important component we must understand, we should keep at the back of our mind. And then, of course, last but not least, what different types of the attachment. And that's the reason why, again, I'm just bringing the conversation and the presentation to closure, saying that investigation and analytical review is not a policing act or exercise, but its objective is to add a value to the system, to the business, and to the customers. So with this, I end my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Donde. Thank you for this very insightful presentation. I think we should now open it for question and answers, if it's fine with you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So there are already a few questions. So should I begin?
Yeah.
All right. So starting from the latest one. Okay. There's no name mentioned, but the question is, during review, if we could not able to get any root cause or probable cause, what further we need to perform?
Can you just come again?
Yeah, during review, if you
Yeah.
could not, if you're not able to get any root cause or
Yeah.
probable cause, what further actions can we take? What can we do? Yeah.
Yes, I would request Nilanjana to supplement to this. Nilanjana?
Yes, I was just thinking if I didn't hear Dr. Desai, and he is the best person to respond to that. If you are there, Dr. Desai, otherwise I will take that up.
Nilanjana, you answer it.
Yeah, Nilanjana,
Yeah.
you can go ahead.
Sure. I was just waiting for him. Yeah. So the question is, if we are not finding out the root cause.
Yeah. Yes.
So that means, see, it is a very kind of generic thing to answer. We need to get the specifics, but if you don't get a root cause, then you will have to actually cancel it, like reject the badge, because you will not be able to, if your hypothesis is not, you are not being able to prove it, that why it happened, and you have no idea, then you do not have the idea, like tomorrow it can happen once again. So if you don't get a root cause, you just have to, stall it. You cannot move forward.
One more thing I would like to add. Generally, that this is where the typically people say that we could not find the root cause, and that is the reason why when we talk about that the preliminary investigation. Now, it is not that there will not be root cause. Root cause will be there. The event has happened. That means something is not right, and that is where, as a reviewer, probably we need to basically go and ask whether this has been done within the time frame of that 24 hours, 48 hours, because it is highly impossible to really understand that there is no root cause. So what is important here, one, as I go by what Nilanjan has said, but as a part of the future, because this might become a reoccurrence. So it is important for me to really go back and see what is the effectiveness of my investigation mechanism itself. And this is where, as a reviewer, you have got very important role to play in identifying and assessing why the effectiveness of the investigation itself is missing. That's what probably I would like to supplement to this.
And another thing that I would like to add here, that of late in the industry, there has been a thing that if we reject the batch, everything is fine because no one is going to question anything. But the point that we will have to keep in mind that that's not a solution, because the more you get your batches, then how do you explain that? So you have not understood why you failed, and you are continuing your, I think there is a question I could see there. You are continuing your manufacturing. What's the guarantee that tomorrow also you will not have similar kind of failure? So we will have to find out the root cause. Rejection is a very, very, easy or shortcut. Of course, it brings us a lot of loss of revenues. Yeah. But at the same time, if we think that we are very safe by rejecting batch, we are not.
Yeah, rejection also probably doesn't help you in finding out what should be the corrective actions and preventive actions. So by saying rejecting the batch, it's right. Okay, but for any cause, there will be something will be there. Some reason has to be there. It will be probable reasons, probably.
Yes.
You may close it by saying at least it is probable causes are these, and plan your actions on that if you are not able to find exact reason.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think there is one more question. What I could read here is in terms of how to minimize the human errors. I think that is something which is propping up time and again. So of course, I would like Nilanjana to respond to this, but before that, see, one thing which is very, very important, all of us, as far as this industry is concerned, I think we have to come out of this one mindset that, the human error is bound to happen. And the research itself shows that, human error could be at the most, maybe 3 to 5%. But 95% of the time, if anything goes wrong, it is purely my system is not capable to stop the error which are going to happen. Now, and if you really go back to this, the way things has gone wrong, and if you start asking the question to the system, now system inadequacy itself is a major reason why the human error happens. And it's not going to solve the problem. Nilanjan, I want you to throw some more light on.
Yeah. I think I can speak for hours on this particular, my favorite topic of human error. So human error, it doesn't happen just like that. So it is very, there is one term which we call elephant trap. So the traps are there all across, and that is happening not for human individual mistake. It is happening because your process is not robust enough. So there is one dark corner in the laboratory where you are reading small fonts and it is very noisy. Human error will happen. So you have to factor in those risks because of which human error happens. And then you see that human error will not happen. So we encounter human error because we kind of fall prey to it. We let that happen. If we study that, we will get to know that there is a trend. And if we get into that structured understanding of human error and make those process so robust that on that day when you had a flat tire or you are very disturbed or you had, continuous shifts or your child cried the entire night, those days also you will not make errors, because the process knows that this might happen any day. It can happen. The person who is doing it might be under stress, but that is factored in the process. Then also you will not fail. Like you have a better font size, you will have a better lux level. There will be no informal process. These kinds of things, and your information process will be very, very clear. If you have watched that, how they were communicating. One was saying, another one was saying that, yes, this is what it is. And we, in human error, I am just tempted to say something more. Many of our errors happen because we assume that that person has heard what I said, but that person never heard. So that checking mechanism and factoring all the reasons for human error in our process, human error will not happen. It will get reduced.
Thank you, Nilanjana. I think there was one more question which was popping up. Then where do we start? When do we stop in case of the YY analysis? I'm saying that's very, very common questions, but it is very critical as well. Now, when you are going to do the YY analysis, now sometimes what happens when we talk about the 5Y analysis, people do think that I need to continue till 5th Y, then only I will get the root cause. It is not necessary. You can get the root cause even in the 2nd Y, 3rd Y, 4th Y as well. Now the question is where to stop. Now anything which is actionable. Now the moment you are going to ask certain question, Y1, Y2, Y3. Now if for a given Y, if it is actionable, then you need to basically stop there. Now, just to cite an example, if I had to give an example, now assuming that I have got a headache. Now, headache is basically a symptom. That is something what I'm bothering. Now, the next question I'm going to ask a question. Okay, what could be the reason for my headache? I may say that probably my stomach upset. The stomach upset is something which can be a reason for my headache. I'm just giving this example. Now, can I just go back and take action on the stomach upset? One way is I may say that I may take certain pill or medicine and I say that my stomach upset can be controlled. But what we are doing, you are actually again working on the symptoms of my stomach upset. Okay, so what happened? Then you are going to ask the next question, why stomach upset? Then the question will come, probably it could be because of your eating habit. Now the next question you are going to ask, is it possible for me to go and improve the eating habit? So this is where I mean, now improving the eating habit could be something which is an actionable. So this is where we need to, I'm just giving a mundane example so that we can relate this with our processes as well. And that's where we need to stop when we talk about this YY analysis. I know that many times the people out of fear, they try to conclude on the symptoms itself because they don't know where to stop. So that's what I thought I'll just add to this.
Yes, wanted to request everyone to share their feedback. I've posted the link. So while people are asking their questions, I would also request them to share the feedback so that we can further improve.
Right. Any other questions are for us?
Yeah, so most of them are talking about root cause. I think multiple questions are all about root cause identified. Like this one new question, in out of trend, if no root cause identified with respect to laboratory data or data evaluation and manufacturing scale investigation, then how can it can be justified? Because our answer is product compliant with specification, so no impact on product quality. It's a long question, but it's again about if no root cause is identified, what could be the actions? I think there are multiple questions on this.
Yeah, as we said that we have to find out the root cause, but I think I saw one question that investigators don't like training as a corrective action. Is there a question like that? I think it's one question.
Yes, it was that.
Yes,
Nilanjan, you can respond to those.
Yes.
So I will take that absolutely, that you cannot just give retraining or training as a corrective action. And like in our organization, we have completely stopped that. It can be an associated action. So if your SOP is not adequate, you corrected the SOP and you trained people on that SOP. That's fine. If your STP, like standard test procedure, is not, there is a gap and people have difficulty in understanding, you corrected that and then you trained on that. But you train on the same thing again and again, you are going to put yourself in a big trouble. So that's absolutely a no-no. Training is absolutely a no-no. If we say that we have trained people, that's not going to help us. Actually, it is going to put us in more trouble.
Yeah,
We have to find out the right platform.
Yeah, just to supplement. In fact, why we need to ask this question to ourselves: why the regulatory is getting irritated whenever you are talking about this, the training need identified and training is provided. Okay, as Nilanjan has given an example. Okay, when there has to be a specific justification for the training. But many times the training needs comes whenever you are citing the root cause as a human error. And that is where we are getting to the training part. And that is something which the regulatory, they really hate this. And more than regulatory, it is important for us to understand, primarily, it is because something in my system is not right. And since the system is not adequate, system is not capable enough, hence this kind of the misses are happening. So I just cannot keep on training the same person on the same thing multiple times. Obviously, that gives the completely flaw in your system. One, either your training has got a flaw. Second, then you are just bringing this as a reason to just pacify these things. So that is something which is very, very important. And obviously, the people are not going to accept it.
And it is high time that we understand that human error is not due to human.
Yes.
It is about the system. So there are structured methodology available through which we really have to find out what is the root cause of the human error.
One more question I was, what Sarfaraz was referring probably, although that was pretty long question. So maybe I would try my level best. I think that was primarily with we are talking about the out of trade, OOT. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, the first and the foremost, which all of us needs to understand, because what happened, we are using the control charts to understand the OOT. I would say that's a basic tool what we are using it. Many times we are not very clear when the trend is getting formed. Now, first, we have to get the understanding about the how the trend formation needs to be interpreted while using the control charts. Point number one. Now, why we need to, and while doing that, now it's not that something which is your product has failed or it has not gone out of your specification, but why that OOT needs to be taken care, because if you don't take care OOT, there is a high chances that you are going to basically go out of the specification. Now, when you are going to look at the trend, now what the trend is going to tell you, there is a possibility that something is happening on the shop floor or maybe by the testing method, that after certain periodicity, and when I'm saying the trend has got certain its pattern. After certain patterns, this trend keeps on changing it. So that means at that point of time, either my changeover is happening, or some kind of the maintenance might have taken, or some my raw material might have changed, or something might have happened. So it is important for us to go back and check with that trend what has gone wrong or what was different. I'm not saying it is wrong. So it is important for us to go back and understand and give your rationale over there. This is where the trend has started forming. And that is becomes your justification, so that in the future, you are avoiding the process failure. That's what my 2 cents on this question probably. Nilanjana, you want to supplement to this?
No, I think you have detailed it quite well.
So any other questions are for us?
Yeah, so again, so there's a new question: incidents related to instrument performance as a probable cause. In these cases, even vendor could not able to pinpoint the cause.
Nilanjana?
Right. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Well, you can take
actually, this. Yes, actually, we have seen that whenever this instrument related things happen, there we need to have a kind of subject matter expertise. What happens, that we actually call that happened, and then we can leave it to them. But our instruments, you take to Chromanila, everything is now so much of it is software based, and they are talking to us. If you look at the data and convert that into information, you will get to see that when a problem is going to happen, one column is showing signals, giving signals that it is going bad. And then one fine morning it happens. And then we don't get it because we are not looking at the historical data. If we keep on plotting that, the tailing factors, all, it will start talking to you. Instrument related failures, and you call the vendors, what happens? The competency of different vendors is also different. So that particular person whom you called probably didn't get it because he is not that expert. So one is you will have to identify the expert amongst the vendors, the real subject matter expert, and also in your system, looking at the data, continually create that trend which is going to talk to you, which is going to tell you that this is going to go wrong. And we have seen that happens. So if they cannot, probably you escalate and look at your own data. These are the two things that you can do.
All right. Yeah, so there was one interesting question. Verbal feedback or verbal information, is it accounted as a checklist? I mean, or it has to be documented? There was one question.
It has to be documented. I will, Vijay, you may add.
So,
I will say, yeah.
so,
Not
regulators,
not done.
okay, so regulators don't accept verbal check, right? So it has to be documented, as you said.
Yeah, I'm sure this question was flashed during the video.
Exactly.
The aircraft video.
Yes.
But definitely, nothing can be taken as an verbal. It has to be documented at any cost.
Yes, yeah. And in the video, if you have noticed, it is talking about read, look, listen. Yes. So that person is that effectively they are. What she is saying, is he checking that? And what is he saying? And she is confirming. So that way, of course, it has to be documented.
Yes.
Okay. Is it acceptable to have batch failures with assignable or probable cause repeatedly?
Repeatedly?
Yeah.
No. You will have to see the process capability in that case. For the business continuity. Otherwise, why it should fail like that? So
see, as Nilanjan has rightly said, if there is a repeat failure is coming out of the process, so there are 2-3 things then. One is that, as she has rightly said, my process is not capable to give me the consistent performance. Now there is a possibility while doing that, you may have to go back to even with the R&D also. You can seek the help from the R&D while working on these particular things. At the same time, it's not only the process R&D, but even the analytical R&D also. So it is very, very important, and this is very dangerous if I'm having the repetitive failure coming out of the process. So the process is not stable, process is not robust, which is basically the bread and butter of our pharma as an industry and domain. That's what I would suggest.
Okay. How to investigate the DI related deviations and how to do the impact assessment?
Can you just
how to investigate the DI related deviations and how to do the impact assessment?
What is that VI, Nilanjan? I'm
no,
not aware.
Data integrity related.
DI. Okay.
DI, yeah.
Data integrity related failures and Sarfaraz just coming in. Sorry.
Yeah, how to do the impact assessment? What would be the impact of that failure? How to do the assessment?
Can I just respond?
Yeah, please.
See, first of all, data integrity, the impact assessment, what is that impact assessment you are talking about? The data integrity itself is a huge impact. Now, that is where it is going to ruin the image of the organization. That's the reason why I was reflecting that it is important as a reviewer. We need to basically understand where those data integrity things are going to come up. So it is, one is that we need to go, of course, now this has happened. Now we need to get back into the entire root cause analysis, why this data integrity has happened. And this has to be set right absolutely as an organizational top priority. This cannot be kept as a second, because this is where the organizational image is going to be at stake. That's what my take on this data integrity issue.
Yeah, data integrity, I completely agree. There is no impact such. People are in the entire industry is completely like, there is no zero tolerance, as it said.
Absolutely.
Can I respond a little bit on this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think if data integrity
Warning letter or some.
Nilanjana, you were saying something I could not get.
There was a lag actually. There's overlap.
Shiriji, you can carry on now.
If you find a data integrity issue in your organization, I think it has got great ramification, as Vijay has talked as well as Nilanjana has talked. But first thing needs to be done, if data integrity is found, first thing is you need to file a FAR to the FDA, such and such and found, and then you have to investigate where that person has done that in data integrity, and you have to investigate which things could be affected, because that could be a point, and you need to field action report you have to give, because that could have impact on the marketed batches, which you already done it. So it's not a very simple thing, just finding out the data integrity, then it could result into severe, it could have severe impact on your company's working as well as the marketed products. Everywhere it can have impact big way. But investigation needs to be done. Who has done, what has where he has worked earlier, what things he has done wrong. Whole thing has to be investigated and kept ready. Probably, if you are not going to take any further action, then you have to keep it ready. Thank you.
Yes, and another point that I would like to add is that disciplinary action, keeping a monitoring of that. Generally, that system is there inside, and so that is also another human behavior trend that we will get to understand from one side to another. What is this trend called? How many disciplinary actions have been issued for the employees?
Okay.
Yeah, I was just reading one more question. If CAPA effectiveness found fail, then how to handle and address an investigation? See, the first and the foremost, when we are talking about this effective CAPA, if you are going to follow all the steps what we prescribed some time back, or it is coming from out of the ICH guidelines, there is no way that your effectiveness is going to get lost. Now, effectiveness is going to get compromised only when we are taking the shortcuts. Effectiveness is going to get compromised only when we are working on the preconceived root causes, which you may be right, be right also. So what is important here? It is important for us to really understand. Are they aware about this entire 7-step? Are they aware the implication of it? Yeah. And you need to basically set up the system right rather than focusing on one individual. And that is where this entire CAPA effectiveness is going to be critical. And as a reviewer, I'm very happy this question is coming. And as a reviewer, again, this is where a major role has to be played by the reviewer. How can we actually enhance this effectiveness of these things based on whatever things which we have discussed in the last maybe hour and a half or so? I hope that satisfies the answer to this question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think more or less we are done with all the questions. That's what I believe, and it's almost 6 o'clock. Sir?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Vijay. Thank you, Nilanjana, for the very insightful session. I'd like to call Shirish sir to share the vote of thanks. Shirish sir.
Okay, thank you. Devang, thank you. I think overall the session was very interactive and very interesting. A lot of people have said that please share the recording. So it shows the interest what has been generated by Vijay and Nilanjana. So I think it was an excellent session. Thank you both for giving this wonderful session. And also we will have such more sessions within short time. I think we are planning to have regular such type of sessions every 2 months or 3 months. Thank you everybody for coming also, because it's though the physical sessions have started, still to get so many people at one time, still our virtual session is helping us on this line. So thank you everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, everyone.
for
Thank
giving
you,
this
everyone. Thank you.